So, what happened to the future? I think you had a pretty impressive speech right now. Everywhere you look, you hear about terrorism. They got Paris, they got Mali, they got Beirut. You hear about climate change. You hear about epidemic. You hear about unemployment. You hear about crisis. It seems that the future is not a place that you want to live in anymore. It seems the future is very gloomy. It's not a nice place. But when I was a child, I really liked the future. Well, first of all, because I was a child, but also because I love science fiction. When I was young, I would only read science fiction. That's all I would read. And I love science fiction because science fiction was full of possibilities. Now, science fiction, usually people tell me they don't like science fiction. I understand that. Maybe they got the wrong image. Maybe they think Star Wars. Well, first of all, Star Wars is not science fiction. Science fiction is supposed to take place in the future. And science fiction, as probably you know, is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's the past. The future I'm talking about is more people like Asimov, Philip K. Dick, Jan Banks, Frank Herbert. When I was young, I was reading those guys, and I was reading all their books, and the future again looked full of possibilities. It was full of possibilities because the point of science fiction is not to predict the future, it's to invent it. So Asimov was saying that in the future, the robots will be everywhere. Now, there will be some problems with the robots, but we'll find a way to solve those problems. Asimov was also speaking about this science so precise and so powerful that he will be able to predict the future of humanity. Asimov wrote 500 books. He was a very serious guy. I tried to read as many as I could. Of course, I couldn't read the 500 books, but Asimov, Dick, Herbert, I grew up with those guys. Later on, I went to the basics. I went to read Jules Verne, the French Jules Verne, and also the British H.G. Wells. And I started to understand what science fiction was trying to do. Science fiction is inventing the future, but also preventing the future. Science fiction invents the future in a sense that the point is to say, well, now we're not dependent on the gods. We're not dependent on supra beings. We can do whatever we want because we have technology and science. That was the belief of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. Because we have this new power, because we have this science, because we have this technology, we can almost play gods. And I like that a lot. Inventing the future, inventing what we're going to become. It was very exciting for me when I was a child, very exciting. But science fiction also told me something. Apart from inventing the future, science fiction is preventing the future, is saying warning. If you carry on a certain direction, maybe humanity will face tremendous problems. So science fiction was doing both, inventing and preventing. And I was reading science fiction, I was watching science fiction, I was feeding on science fiction. And it really taught me a lot. Philip K. Dick, for instance, definitely fueled my research later on in university. Philip K. Dick is talking about the real world, the world beyond the appearance. He was talking about maybe in the future there will be something like today we call the Matrix, because the guys who made the Matrix borrowed everything from Philip K. Dick and never gave it back. So science fiction really helped me grow when I was young, as a child, and then as a teenager. But then when you say you like science fiction, even today, people think that you're some kind of a geek. Even worse, a nerd. I mean, today nerds are cool. I mean, Big Bang Theory, whatnot. If you're a nerd, you're supposed to be cool. But back in the day, I'm speaking 30 years ago, being a nerd was not exactly good. Plus, I was a redhead. So I had to do something about it. So at one point, I decided to, I wouldn't say stop reading science fiction, but to become a bit serious. And I sort of opened the closet of childhood, and just like some people put there the teddy bear or the dolls of their childhood, I decided to also sort of give up a little bit on science fiction so that I would look more serious. And I started to read serious books, real literature, and then academic books. And I went to university, and I got a BA in political science, because that's the most serious you can get in humanities. And I got an MPhil in cultural studies, because it was fun. And an MA in film studies, because... And I was like, why am I constantly changing? I understood this when I got my doctorate in history. I understood that the whole time my point was to understand the power of stories. The reason why I switched from poli-sci to cultural studies, to this, to that, to constantly changing and also moving from one place to the other, because I was born in France, then I moved to Great Britain, then the United States, then Lebanon, and Central Europe, and now I live in the Netherlands. The idea was really to try and understand how a story can really empower people. But throughout my studies, I have to say I was not a very good student. I was ditching a lot of class. I don't think I was considered brilliant, to be honest. I think that many of my professors, when they heard that I got the doctorate, I think some of them got a heart attack or something. But the thing is, I was not a very good student because I was also questioning the system, which I thought I had to do as a student. And when I became a professor later on, when I started teaching, I also thought that I was supposed to question the system. But, you know, if you've been to university, well, probably many of you guys are students. How many of you are students? Can I see? All right. The rest probably you remember. If you're a student, well, questioning the system is not something that you're supposed to do in university. Then I was wondering what exactly the purpose of university. And I have all these students who come to my lectures. Sometimes they wake up very early because for them coming to a lecture at 9 is very early. And I really want to give them as much as I can. And so I was thinking of a way to actually improve what I was teaching and also their experience of learning. And so I went and I opened the closet of my childhood. And I saw this science fiction laying there. I thought maybe there is a way to actually explain that university is a great place not to waste your time to my students. And I was starting with the idea of using science fiction in my course. And this year, as you had said, I started a center on the histories of future. Something, again, that looks serious because you have to look serious. That was at university, but to try and understand how science fiction can empower us and how science fiction, by telling stories of the future, can help us invent the future. How science fiction can tell the story of the future. Now, in science fiction, again, you have many different stories. Science fiction is not there to predict. Science fiction is not arrogant. Science fiction is there to provide you with stories that hopefully can inspire you. So I was thinking about how I could inspire students with science fiction. And one day I found this academic article speaking about science fiction prototyping. And science fiction prototyping is using science fiction in university, mostly in engineering school, in, I would say, hard sciences, using science fiction to explain to students that by imagining the future, by imagining something, they can create it. And so I decided to use this. Actually, I just read the title and the abstract. I did not even read the article. I was too excited. I said, okay, we're going to do science fiction prototyping. We're going to use science fiction so that students can actually create the future. Because at the end of the day, these students, they are the future. When I say this, I don't really feel good because I think that this is something everybody says. But it's true, students are the future. Students are the ones who are going to design the future. And maybe there is a way for these students to design a future that we want to live in. Maybe there is a way for students to succeed where we're screwed up. Maybe there is a way for students to invent a future where everybody will be comfortable. Sounds like a utopia. It probably is. But if you don't speak about utopia in university, where are you going to speak about utopia? But I discovered one problem, something I didn't realize when I was a child. I discovered something about science fiction, which is very easy to explain. Most science fiction is written by white males. And if white males are imagining the future, you can be sure that you'll have flying cars, but probably no gender equality. I didn't invent this one. I think I borrowed it somewhere. But it's true. If white males imagine the future is going to look exactly like the past. We've been running this world forever. Have we succeeded? White males, come on. We haven't. The world we have today is not exactly successful. Again, terrorism, wars, bombing, suicide, epidemics, all those that you see in the news, it's us. So if you try to inspire people, if you try to inspire students with this kind of science fiction, with this white male science fiction, the problem is that probably they're going to repeat it. And that's also the problem at university. We provide students with literature that is also written by white males, and most of the time coming from the West. I hardly see literature coming from Africa or even Asia. and definitely not from South America. So what do you do in that case? Well, in that case, I told my students, the thing is, you're going to imagine the future, but I'm not going to give you any example. They hated it at first because they were like, what should we do? They felt like this freedom was actually a problem. Instead of feeling too free, they felt like there was something missing. They had no ground. So I tried to explain to them that that's the thing. About the future, just tabula rasa. Just imagine what could the future be. And many of them, again, they were very uncomfortable because they were looking for literature, and some of them just said, okay, well, what exactly is the time span? I say 10 years. I think 10 years is good. Because in 10 years, many things can happen. In 10 years, if you look at what happened regarding technology, many things happen. So I said 10 years. So some of them actually came up with, well, in 10 years, we'll be able to print 3D print organs. I say, how about in 10 years, you're able to print a sexual partner? How about that? Oh, okay, I didn't think about that. And I say, well, in that case, can you marry the thing that you printed? And I say, okay, we're going to think about it. And they look at me like... But I say, that's the point. Imagine the future. What kind of future do you want? And don't go and look into what the experts say. If you look at what the experts say 10 years ago about the future in 10 years, they were all wrong. I mean, in university, don't get me wrong, we're very good to predict the future after it happened, in a sense that we can explain why it happened and why we're wrong. That's what we're very good at. But the thing is, I noticed that the very good students in this kind of work were actually the ones that usually didn't succeed at university, because those who succeeded at university were the ones that were able to jump into the loops, in a sense that taking the articles, reproducing, and everything. And that's not what I wanted. I was pretty pleased with this science fiction prototyping because I thought that it was a way for students to understand really the power not just of science fiction, but also of university. Like I said, I was not a good student, really. I wasn't. But I really believed in university, and I truly believe in education. And I think the reason why I still do my job and the reason why I keep going to university year after year, although I always constantly question my choice, is that I believe that university should be really the place where we invent the future, and we invent it with a lot of modesty, but also of humanity. I think it's essential, this idea of humanity. I think it's essential to sort of bring back the human at the center of what we do at university, because there's one thing also about science fiction. In the beginning, we thought that technology would save us, that we didn't need the gods, we didn't need those stories, mythologies, whatnot. But the thing about technology and science is that science is going much faster than society. I was not kidding about this idea of 3D printing organs. Probably it will come. Actually, we do it right now. Okay, it's there. Same for self-driving car. And I'm positive that we can also have flying cars and whatnot. Even hoverboard and self-lacing shoes. But bringing the human back at the center of what we do is getting more and more important. This science fiction prototyping has become something of an obsession for me. Also, recently 2 things happened to me. First of all, last month, I got my first baby, my first son, a boy. And of course, in that case, you wonder what kind of planet you want to leave to your son. And a few days later, my father died. So at the same time, I had those 2 life events happen to me. So it made it even more urgent for me to think about the future, think about what I should transmit, what my father gave me, what my father transmitted, and what I should transmit, what kind of planet, what kind of values I should transmit to my son. I think now it's time for me, not just to go to the airport, but also to go, and again, with a lot of modesty, but a lot of belief and passion, to go and invent the future one step at a time, one future at a time. And I hope you will join me. Thank you.